This is CBN NewsWatch.
And thank you so much for joining us for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. I'm Ephraim Graham. The Senate voted Thursday to advance legislation opposing the withdrawal of U.S. troops from Syria and Afghanistan. It comes from Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell following President Trump's call for troops to leave both countries. The measure says the Islamic State group and al-Qaeda militants still pose a serious threat and warns U.S. troop withdrawal could allow the terrorists to regroup, destabilize critical regions, and create vacuums that could be filled by Iran or Russia. It encourages cooperation between the White House and Congress to develop long-term strategies in both nations, including a thorough accounting of the risk of withdrawing too hastily. President Donald Trump maintains pulling troops is the right way to go.
We've done tremendous in the last couple of weeks. At the same time, we're consolidating, and a tremendous amount of good things are happening. You even look at what's going on, and I can't tell you that this is a guarantee because we're going into close to 19 years in being in Afghanistan. And for the first time, they're talking about settling. They're talking about making an agreement. And we bring our people back home. If that happens, we'll see what happens. But they're in very serious negotiations for the first time. There's a reason for that. So I think we're doing so well on a foreign policy basis.
The vote is the latest indication of division between the Republican Senate and the president on foreign policy matters. CBN senior international correspondent Gary Lane is here to talk more about this. So how surprising is it the Senate would actually go against the president's decision?
Well, a little bit surprising, but you know, there are a lot of Republicans in the Senate that are very strong on defense and national security issues. So it's the president, they would oppose the president on this. What is surprising, though, Ephraim, is that you've had nearly half the Democrats in the Senate that joined in on this. Generally, traditionally, Democrats do not support troops on the boots on the ground unless it's a Democratic president who's proposing it. But that was a bit surprising. 3 senators, for every 3 senators that voted in favor of this, only 1 voted against it.
Okay. Why does the president insist on pulling the troops out?
Well, he thinks it's mission accomplished. His idea was to send American troops in to train the Kurds as they were fighting ISIS, to defeat ISIS, to chase them out of Raqqa. And at one time, they controlled about 1/3 to maybe 1/4 only of the territory in Syria. Now they're down to just a small swath of land in eastern Syria. So he looks at it, he says, mission accomplished. When it comes to Afghanistan, I think he's looking at that and saying, American troops have been there for over 18 years. There are soldiers that are going over there that weren't even alive when we first sent our troops there. So I think he feels enough already with Afghanistan.
Now, we know we've heard the president digging in his heels when it comes to a border wall. Is he willing to give in on this, or is he digging in his heels here as well?
Well, he's already giving in a little bit. I mean, initially he wanted to get the troops out immediately in Syria. Now he's saying, well, maybe a phased withdrawal. So we'll see what happens there. With Afghanistan, he said maybe down to 7,000. He might give and take on that a little bit. But he's still digging in his heels on as far. He seems a little libertarian, doesn't he? He almost seems like, look, this is not a good idea to have the American troops in these places around the world.
What do you think is likely to happen?
Well, you know, if he's precipitous in this, if he's too hasty, I think what we're going to see happen there, potentially you could have ISIS come back or another group like ISIS, because everyone said the problem with Iraq was that we withdrew too quickly. We announced when we were going to withdraw, we withdrew, and look, all of a sudden you have ISIS. Same thing happened in Vietnam. After the Vietnam War in Southeast Asia, up comes Pol Pot, the Khmer Rouge, 2.5 million people killed. So when we are hasty in our thinking on this and pulling people out, there are consequences to that.
Getting ready for the State of the Union address, you think this will be one of the issues the president talks about?
Well, I think he might mention it. I think you're going to hear more about border security and the wall and the possibility of an emergency, state of emergency.
All right. Thanks a lot, Gary Lane. Much appreciated. Of course, CBN News will head to Capitol Hill for more on the vote to slow down the troop withdrawal from Syria. That is this evening on CBN's Faith Nation, and of course, it's only on the CBN News channel. President Donald Trump's decision to pull American troops out of Syria has led to a power struggle among some bad actors in the Middle East. CBN's Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell traveled to northeast Syria to explain what this might mean for the region and beyond.
After President Trump's announcement of a pullout of U.S. troops, A geopolitical tug-of-war began over northeast Syria. Who wins will determine the future and fate of the Middle East. The main players are a threatening lineup: Turkey's President Erdogan, Russian President Putin, Syrian President Assad, and Iran's Supreme Leader Khamenei, all wanting to fill any void left by the exit of U.S. troops. Their target? Leaders of a new, largely democratic government inside northeast Syria. It includes Christians, Arabs, Kurds, and other ethnic groups. They say Trump's surprise decision left them at the mercy of the larger nations around them.
The people in this area are very frightened by the decision of the American pullout because a lot of countries and militias are coveting the region east of the Euphrates to replace the American. Russia, the Assad regime, Iran and Turkey, or the Nusra Front that have declared publicly that they will support Turkey on their attack of the east of the Euphrates.
The decision by President Trump for the withdrawal of the U.S. troops was a decision not at a good time, and it wasn't coordinated with us if we are ready or not ready. This decision had really negative consequences on the Council.
Most see Turkey as their main threat.
Turkey is so dangerous because it has been the old and the new enemy for our people from before the revolution and now. Erdogan wants to take our area to make it to him, related with the Turkish government.
Then Syria and Russia came courting, hoping to build a relationship. Yet if this new government were to align with Assad and Putin, the regional chess game could increase the threat to Israel. That's because an alliance between this newly formed government and Syria could provide Iran with a much larger route to transport weapons and supplies to Hezbollah in Lebanon. This would complete Iran's desire to build a land bridge to the Mediterranean. Earlier this month, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo explained what happens when the U.S. leaves a power vacuum.
We learned that when America retreats, chaos often follows. When we neglect our friends, resentment builds. And when we partner with our enemies, they advance.
If the Americans go out and there's no agreement on the political front, for sure that's going to cause a lot of chaos in the area, and that chaos will cause a lot of conflict in the region.
While it remains to be seen who will win this tug of war and fill the void here, all indications are whoever prevails will help dictate the future course of the Middle East, Israel, and perhaps the world. It's all part of a new emerging Middle East. We'll have more reports here from northeast Syria, including what these new developments mean for Christians in the region. Some are openly talking about the possibility of another genocide. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, northeast Syria.
Islamic groups gathered in Pakistan Friday to protest the acquittal of Bibi. The Christian woman was previously convicted for blasphemy and spent 8 years on death row in 2009 after being charged with insulting Islam's prophet Muhammad. Leaders from Pakistan's far-right Islamic political party are even urging transport operators to stay off the roads and join the protest. Bibi is in hiding at an undisclosed location and plans to join her daughters abroad, but there is no word when that might happen. More protests are expected across the country over the weekend. U.S. trade representatives say substantial progress has been made as America and Chinese negotiators finish up 2 days of trade talks in Washington. China and the U.S. are hoping to strike a deal by the March 1st deadline. That is when U.S. tariffs against Chinese goods are scheduled to jump from 10% to 25%. President Donald Trump remains optimistic, saying we're going to have a great trade deal.
When President Xi and I meet, we want to have it down so that we have certain points that we can discuss. And I would say agree to, but we're not quite at that stage yet. But all of these representatives are coming to a conclusion, except for certain very important points. And we want to make it comprehensive. We want to make a deal that we can look at and be proud of for many years, not where we have to go back and renegotiate or we left things out.
The president says China is also increasing soybean purchases, and that will, quote, make our farmers very happy. The worst polar vortex freeze is over, with AccuWeather forecasters predicting a temperature swing of about 40 to 80 degrees in the days ahead. At least 13 people died because of the extreme winter weather. It was a rough week across the nation, from the Dakotas to the north and southeast. Wind chills reaching record-breaking sub-zero temperatures like -66 in Minnesota and 41 below in Chicago. Drivers faced whiteout conditions, and despite the freeze, fires were breaking out and the winter winds not helping firefighters in Brooklyn, New York, where a 10-alarm inferno destroyed a paper mill. Forecasters say the warm-up will be dramatic, but the cold isn't gone just yet, and it simply will not be as extreme. Christians in the United Arab Emirates are prepping for a visit from the Pope. Pope Francis' arrival on Sunday marks the first papal visit to the Arabian Peninsula, the birthplace of Islam. Rulers in the United Arab Emirates, which have described 2019 as the nation's year of tolerance, have supported the Catholic community by donating land for their churches.
Christian community is a community that lives in harmony and peace with the local community. The local community is an open community. They have welcomed us. They have given us the freedom to worship here. And therefore we are very happy, and we want to live in peace and harmony with them. And therefore we promote and we encourage people to appreciate the tolerance that they enjoy in this country and pray for them. In fact, we have every day a prayer for the rulers and people of this country.
There are 9 Catholic churches in the UAE. A student in Israel stumbled upon a rare Second Temple-era coin during a hike last week. The coordinator of government activities in the territories released the image of the coin. Pictured on it are 3 stalks of grain and a royal canopy with the words King Agrippa engraved in it. Agrippa refers to Herod Agrippa, who ruled ancient Judea from 41 AD to 44 AD. Herod Agrippa is the King Herod named in Acts 12. According to Acts, King Agrippa persecuted the church in Jerusalem. He imprisoned Peter and had James killed. The coin will be guarded by the Israeli Antiquities Authority's collection of national treasures. After the break, more cases of abuse popping up in the Catholic community, how the church is responding.
CBN presents The I Wills of God, your path to overcoming fear and anxiety.
We're going to talk about some of the incredible promises God has made to His children.
In Pat Robertson's newest teaching, you'll discover the I Wills of God. I will rescue him, protect him, answer him, be with him in trouble, deliver him, honor him, satisfy him with long life, show him my salvation, and see amazing stories of God's promises in action.
What I felt was loved and treasured.
God spared my life twice in 3 days.
The good Lord had given me a second chance.
Break free from stress and despair.
The Lord doesn't want you to live in fear, but to know the rewards given to those who love God.
Call 1-800-700-7000 or visit CBN.com. The I Wills of God, your path to overcoming fear and anxiety.
Hello, I'm Terry Newsom. Did you know there are more than 148 million orphans in the world today? 148 million. But it was 3 little girls that taught me about the plight of orphans. My husband and I spent nearly a month immersed in the daily activities of a Ukrainian orphanage as we waited to adopt 3 sisters. I saw firsthand the utter loneliness, the pain of rejection, and the overwhelming desire to be loved. That experience changed me forever. And out of it grew a ministry from my heart called Orphans Promise. Today, we're helping orphans and vulnerable children in more than 50 countries worldwide. Thousands of children are now in safe homes. They're being educated, and they're learning life skills. I'm asking you to join with me and become family to these children. Will you call the number on your screen right now? Because every child deserves a chance to be happy.
Catholic leaders in Texas on Thursday identified 286 priests and others accused of sexually abusing children. 14 Texas dioceses named those credibly accused of abuse. Retired police and federal investigators reviewed the church files and other material to substantiate claims of abuse. It is not clear whether any of the names released could result in local prosecutors bringing criminal charges. The majority of those identified have since died, with some investigations dated back to 1950.
We had hoped that the releasing of these lists would be at least one small step towards transparency and truth. Instead, today is a mixed day for survivors and the transparency that they fought so hard for. The information provided by the Diocese of Dallas is at best incomplete. We don't know when the allegations were received, nor what actions the diocese took when they first learned of the allegations.
The move by the Texas church leaders is similar to reports out of Pennsylvania and Illinois detailing decades of child sexual abuse by more than 300 priests. Meanwhile, in New York, legislators have passed a bill that extends the statute of limitations on child molestation to give victims more time to seek justice. The Child Victims Act gives victims until age 55 to file civil suits and seek criminal charges until age 28. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo supported the bill, saying it was historic and long overdue.
The abuse of minors is an offense so brutal, the church cannot remain indifferent to this. And the church must punish such priests. And that includes to support the legal action. There is no other way out of this because it's a crime. No worse, it's leaving them alive but destroyed. The only sin, I believe, greater than abusing a child would be protecting those who abuse a child.
The Child Victims Act comes just days after Cuomo also signed a bill that allows abortion up to a woman's due date. Joining us right now to talk more about the church's role and what's happening here is our Heather Sells. And Heather, you just produced a half-hour series, if you will. What do you know about evangelical churches when it comes to this?
Right. Well, it's interesting because evangelical churches are organized differently. There's not a lot of denominations. There's a lot of non-denominational churches, and there's smaller associations. So we just don't have the concrete numbers like we do with the Catholic Church. That said, we don't have any reason to believe that evangelical numbers are better or worse. We are seeing more victims in churches coming forward with their stories, and we're seeing a recognition that some parts of church culture are actually leading to abuse. Here's what some of the speakers said at the Wheaton College Me Too Summit in December.
We have a tendency to sort of put our pastors and sometimes worship leaders and others who are up front on kind of a pedestal, treating them like celebrities. And there's a danger in that I think we're all learning.
I think a healthy evangelicalism is an evangelicalism that recognizes that we need to hold one another accountable, that no one is above being questioned, that ultimately we listen to those and believe those who come to us hurting and struggling.
Heather, is there any wide-scale effort to understand sexual abuse in the church and begin to tackle this?
One area where that is happening is in the Southern Baptist denomination right now. One of their surveys found that half of all pastors say they do not have the resources to deal with this issue. So the denomination has invested $250,000 to study sex abuse at the church level and also at its institutions like its seminaries and mission board. For churches that aren't part of a denomination, they can create their own policy on sex abuse and child protection. Doing that can help people in the congregation know what to report and who to report to, and it can help church leaders respond compassionately and consistently. I spoke with former child sex prosecutor Boz Chavijan about this. He consults on the issue with faith-based groups.
At the end of the day, if the church rolls up their sleeves and decides to develop their own policies using resources and the expertise of others, there's a much greater likelihood that that policy will become part of the living DNA of that church, because they'll know what's in the policy, they'll know why what's in the policy is there, and they take ownership of it.
Now, Heather, you also reported on an incredible case of abuse in the church. What did you learn from that?
Right. Well, this was in a case where a family, in fact, the current pastor of a church found out that his dad, who was the former pastor, had been abusing kids, and so they had to work through this whole situation. And one of the really interesting things that came to me in all of this is that we need to be ready to hear these stories. I spoke with Beth Moore about that at the Me Too Summit, and she said, you know, if people have been through these horrific things, then surely we can listen to what they have been through. People also need to be prepared to report, and that is, I think, incredibly hard, but necessary for justice sake. I also want to just mention that oftentimes, and this is what happened in the case of the Hintons, that everyone seemed to pivot to the abuser and ask how he was doing and forget about the victims. And so really important as the church to begin to think about how can we come around victims and how can we come around their families in the aftermath of reporting something like this.
Indeed, victims will live with this for the rest of their lives as well. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I do want to do a quick tag. If you go online, you can find this story. You can see our whole half-hour segment. It's called Pedophile in the Pulpit.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much for that reporting. Still to come here on CBN News, we're going to take a look at this week's top trending stories from FaithWire. Stay with us.
Parents, the Superbook Bible app is a great way to get your child reading the Bible because in today's busy world, we can use some help. The free Superbook Bible app has fun stuff your kids will love. They'll have a blast learning the Bible, playing great games, watching cool videos, discovering heroes in the Bible. They'll have fun while they learn God's Word. The Superbook Kids Bible app, available now.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Discover the I wills of God. I will rescue him, protect him, answer him, be with him in trouble, deliver him, honor him, satisfy him with long life, show him my salvation.
What I felt was loved and treasured.
God spared my life twice in 3 days.
The good Lord had given me a second chance.
Call 1-800-700-7000 or visit CBN.com. The I wills of God, the latest teaching from Pat Robertson.
And welcome back to CBN NewsWatch. Joining us now is CBN's Jessica Chaco and Dan Andros to bring us this week's look at trending stories from FaithWire.com.
Well, the Hillsong Channel recently announced the launch of a brand new show featuring the testimonies of Christian celebrity. Here to tell us more, Dan Andros. Dan, what can we expect from this new program?
Yeah, well, this is a new program that's really aimed, obviously, at youth, which Hillsong typically does, but it's got a really specific angle, which is finding purpose and defining what our actual purpose is in life. And it's hosted by Natalie Manuel-Lee. She's a stylist, and she's going to be talking to a whole bunch of different celebrities that are connected through the Hillsong Church. Hailey Bieber being one, Tyson Chandler being another one. Kelly Rowland is yet another one that'll be on there. So a lot of great testimonies there, and the focus is really great, and it's kind of combating all of these false purposes that are pitched by culture and that are promoted by culture, which is really crucial now, especially in the Instagram era when we've got people just taking selfies and propping up fame and self, just focusing on self. So I think it's very needed, and it's great that Hillsong is tackling this.
Well, you can watch the Hillsong Channel on Amazon, Apple TV, and Roku. Just visit hillsongchannel.com for more information. Well, freezing temperatures are wreaking havoc across the Midwest and Northeast, resulting in property damage and even death. Some of those at greatest risk are Chicago's homeless. Well, that was until a Good Samaritan stepped in to help. Dan, tell us about it.
Yeah, well, first of all, this polar vortex, I'm in the Northeast as well, and the temperatures are just brutal. I mean, the wind chills are in the negatives, and even just being out there for a few minutes, it's just, you're trying to get back inside as quickly as possible. So to imagine these people out there overnight and in it for a long period of time, especially in Chicago where the temperatures were hitting -21 with the wind chill, it's unfathomable. So people were trying to help, and what happened was they donated propane tanks so that homeless people who were under bridges and stuff could try to create heat, but one of them exploded. And so authorities decided that that was too dangerous, so they took away those propane tanks, and so that kind of left all these homeless people going, well, you know, now what? Now we're freezing again. And so a Good Samaritan stepped in out of nowhere. The Salvation Army got this call that 70 homeless people were funded for a full week to stay in a hotel, so they didn't have to worry about the safety issues of the propane tanks, and they could get out of the brutal cold weather.
Well, thanks, Dan. And always, you can find these stories and more by visiting FaithWire on Facebook and on the web at faithwire.com. Back to you.
Still ahead, a group of retired and current NFL players are in Atlanta with a purpose other than football. We'll explore that when we come back.
When you give, smiles grow bigger. When you care, homes are happier. When you comfort, the hurt goes away. When we all come together to love, miracles happen.
Hello, I'm Terry Newsom. Did you know there are more than 148 million orphans in the world today? 148 million. But it was 3 little girls that taught me about the plight of orphans. My husband and I spent nearly a month immersed in the daily activities of a Ukrainian orphanage as we waited to adopt 3 sisters. I saw firsthand the utter loneliness, the pain of rejection, and the overwhelming desire to be loved. That experience changed me forever. And out of it grew a ministry from my heart called Orphans Promise. Today, we're helping orphans and vulnerable children in more than 50 countries worldwide. Thousands of children are now in safe homes. They're being educated, and they're learning life skills. I'm asking you to join with me and become family to these children. Will you call the number on your screen right now? Because every child deserves a chance to be happy.
Hello? Is this thing on? Hey, kids, do you love games? And do you love discovering things? Well, do ya?
Then you're gonna love this. It's the new free Superbook Kids Bible app. You can play games, watch videos, find answers to your questions, and a whole lot more. The new Superbook Kids Bible app. Free downloads available on iTunes and Google Play now.
Well, of course, you know the Patriots and Rams are in Atlanta getting ready for the Super Bowl, but that is not the only team. We're also seeing a gospel choir featuring former players and some who are still in the NFL. Take a listen. That's just a sample of some of the 50 members of the Super Bowl Gospel Choir who performed last night at a gospel celebration during Super Bowl week, and the event will air February 2nd on BET. Well, this weekend, be sure to catch Football Sunday right here on the CBN News Channel. Here's stories from Minnesota Vikings quarterback Kirk Cousins, Denver Broncos quarterback Case Keenum, and New Orleans Saints linebacker Demario Davis. It's all hosted by New Orleans Saint tight end Benjamin Watson. On location in New Orleans, you can see it at 1, 5, 8, and 11. Have a wonderful weekend, everybody. We'll see you right back here come Monday. Goodbye and God bless.